He said, I am so grateful for the community pulling me in to do my very first session and presenting and educating people. And he got the bug and he goes, I've been doing it ever since and I've really been enjoying it and loving it. And once they meet that level of comfort, they'll take that next step.
Today's guest is Bob Buresh, someone who spent years creating spaces where people feel safe, seen, and supported, often without even realizing he's doing it. I invited Bob on the show because he lives out something most leaders talk about but rarely do: building real community through presence, intentionality, and consistency. In this episode, we talk about why showing up matters more than showing off, how to create meaningful connection in a disconnected world, and the quiet leadership that transform lives over time. In today's episode, it comes down to this: the strongest communities are built one intentional relationship at a time. Welcome to The Marketer. Really glad that you guys are able to join us today. I'm excited about this show. We're going to be talking about secrets to successful community building. I have a really excellent guest. Bob Buresh is here today. Bob has a tremendous background and has been building communities over the years. And I just want to get right into it with you, Bob, and start by asking, can you tell us why community is so important in the context of user groups and tech environments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the tech industry, it seems like things change so rapidly. There's improvements, changes, modifications, new releases, and it's hard to keep up to date and continue to understand and learn and know what's going on. And so the community, you have a bunch of people that there's certain expertise that they have that they love to share, and it's much easier to digest and absorb information from another individual than to try to sometimes figure it out on your own. So communities are awesome for sharing knowledge and learning from each other, and that's a big part of what the communities are all about, is helping each other out.
No doubt about it. For one, I've tried to build a number of communities. Emphasis on
It's hard.
tried. It is hard. It's really exceptionally hard. Just trying to get people engaged, not only inviting them to a community and helping them understand the value of that community and why they should join it, but then getting them to stay and actively participate is extremely challenging. So
Absolutely.
can you walk me through a little bit? Now you're in the tech space. So,
Sure.
I'm going to maybe say something controversial, but I know a lot of tech people. They're not super social. And so they don't,
Yeah.
when I think of building communities, I would think that would be even a greater challenge. But just school me a little bit. How did you start? First, why did you start the community? Then how did you start it and get some engagement starting to happen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I technically probably didn't start the community, but I'm helping build this community. Been in this tech space with Microsoft Dynamics for quite a few years, but to your point, stereotypically, maybe tech people can sometimes be a little more introverted, if you will. But you'd be surprised and amazed how many extroverted type of tech people there are, and sometimes you can sort of pull people in. I just saw a post from a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he's a pretty outgoing guy, but he's pretty techy, and he said, I am so grateful for the community pulling me in to do my very first session and presenting and educating people. And he got the bug, and he goes, I've been doing it ever since, and I've really been enjoying it and loving it. And so, it's all a part of inclusion, right? You don't force people to do things. You let them participate at whatever level they feel comfortable. And
Yeah.
once they meet that level of comfort, they'll take that next step and a lot of times on their own. Sometimes you can push them a little or encourage them or nudge them. And stepping out of your comfort zone isn't fun, but sometimes people do it and then they go, oh, that's not so bad.
Sure.
I can do this.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And you're right. There's a lot of tech people who are very outgoing,
very social. So it's totally
For
getting in there.
sure.
But is your community virtual or is it live or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. With this day and age, we've got all the technology in place to make virtual feel almost like you're there. Where our community actually really started right in the heat of when COVID was taking place. And that was really the only option, right? Like there was no in-person type meetings. Everything was virtual and people were just striving to have some social interaction, right? Like that was the thing, is all virtual. So that's kind of where this community dynamics user group sort of started off, is with the virtual aspect of things. And it's died down a little more now that we're back for quite some time doing in-person events, and people are feeling very comfortable. And I don't know if we're back to normal, but it's that new normal.
Sure. Yeah.
And so in-person events seem to be a little more desirable, but um, we're trying to make a global reach, and so virtual has a very big impact. People are still demanding some virtual interaction because, let's face it, we don't have the budget to always travel to be in person, and so it's more affordable, right? Like I can click a button and I can be virtual, and I can hit mute or shut my camera down and still do some work on the side while I'm still being engaged and participating.
Right. So you mentioned that you didn't start the community, but you've been growing it. Can you walk me through that a little bit? Did you take it over a community that was started, and how did that work?
So this specific community, I was invited by the president and the vice president of the company, already engaged with this organization. This community started small, just like anybody else, right? You start from zero and you build it up. We have a couple of really great committed owners, I guess, if you will, that they technically started this dynamics user group idea, and they had full-time jobs and quickly learned that we don't have the time to dedicate to make it a successful user group. We need to get some full-time people that can dedicate the time and are passionate about community, and have that love and feel for it. And so Molly is our president. She's been in community for quite some time. Our vice president Liz, she's been in the community space for 20 plus years. So they really got this thing kind of started and growing. And you got to start small, right? You got
Yeah.
to walk before you can, or crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And so as more programming started to take place within our user group, you have to build your staff to help accommodate and take on that workload. And so Molly and Liz brought me in, almost 2 years ago now, to take over the sales and account management aspect of this organization. So yeah, I didn't start it, but really enjoy being part of it and helping grow it, and making it into a strong organization.
Fantastic. So what was the original intent of starting the community, and has it grown in its intent from when it's first started?
Yeah, it has. It really started with the owners, right? They've been in this dynamic space for quite a few years. They owned their own business, and they were part of another community, prior to the start of this one. And there was a lot of things they liked, and maybe some things they disliked. And they said, it's like building a better mousetrap, I guess, if you will. But they like, well, there's some things that we don't really like. Let's maybe try starting it on our own. And the thing is like, do you build or do you buy, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
always that intent when you're starting a new business. They found a gentleman that had been in this dynamic space for quite some time as a consultant, and he started the role, didn't know anything about the dynamic space, and said, hey, I'm going to start this forum discussion board, and I'm going to just throw questions out and people can ask questions and we all help each other. So it was really the start of his own little community. And he kept it going through his career. And John and Jake, the owners of the Dynamics User Group, found this gentleman and said, hey, we'd like to take this concept or idea you have and grow it. And he's like, yeah, for sure, absolutely. But I'm retiring. You guys can take over. So they ended up, sort of taking this discussion board forum and sort of building upon it. And as I, stated earlier, they just didn't have the time to commit. And so they said, we need to make it bigger by bringing in some full-time staff. And I think that's probably one of the keys is, you got to have somebody dedicated to the community, because it really shows, right? If you're not dedicating the time to it, you give what you get out of it, what you give put into it. So
I totally agree with that. And I have found that to be true with every community that I've either started or been a part of, is that it absolutely requires a leader and somebody that has dedicated themselves to growing that community as well as leading the community on a daily basis, because you can't expect people to join into any community and just have it take off on its own. It's got to have somebody that leads that charge.
absolutely agree with
So,
you.
how many people do you have in your community today?
As far as like members or staff, yeah. So members we continue to grow. I think the last count we had in our database, we were close to 45,000 members.
Wow, that's very impressive. Now, is that spread across multiple platforms, or do you have a centralized platform that you guys like to use for it?
As far as a database, we have a number of sort of databases hodgepodge together, but we're currently in the midst of cleansing all that data, and we're moving into one centralized platform. Finally, it's those centralized platforms to do everything you need from a CRM aspect to marketing to emails to
Yeah.
sales, you know, comes with a price tag. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
again, we have to build up our budget enough to make sure we have something in place where we're finally there. We're moving into a new platform as we speak. We're sort of manipulating that data to make sure we can start out with some clean data in this new database.
Fantastic. What about the community itself, though? Is it operated through a Slack channel, through a social media channel? Is it a group somewhere, or how does it function?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I misinterpreted your original question,
That's
but
okay. I wanted to know that answer anyway, so that was good.
multiple platforms. So I think one of the biggest platforms we use is called Meetup. And this is where it's local leaders, right? Volunteers. Key part of community is volunteers. We've got so many great, passionate volunteers out there that step forward, and so they form their own sort of mini community in their region or their area, and they get things going, and we help promote it and bring people together. And they really get to decide, the agenda and how often they meet and what topics they cover, and we sort of help promote it to get more people to attend and get some more speakers and presentations and sessions and educating. So Meetup's probably one of the big key incubators to the greater Doug community. We have a webinar platform. So if you're, subject matter expert or Microsoft MVP or what have you, just like to present, like to educate people, we have a webinar platform where you're able to go ahead and present your knowledge, and we help promote it and spread it across the community. We do a virtual conference. We have our biggest event is our Dynamics Con in-person conference. We have some open forum discussion boards for multiple product lines. So yeah, multiple different ways of, meeting people's needs, right? Everybody learns differently, right? So
Yeah,
trying to accommodate everybody's different ways they like to digest information.
fantastic. Sounds like quite the group. It sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on a continual basis. Um, I know when I first talked to you about coming on The Marketer, I said, based on some feedback that I'm getting from my listeners, they're wanting to hear more sales incorporated into the show. So we're going to do that. Um, you had mentioned that you're responsible for sales, not only growing the network, but then um, basically being a revenue engine. So, walk me through a little bit from a sales standpoint. How do you utilize this community of 46,000 people as a revenue generator for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this community specifically, it's probably not any different than others, but it's made up of different types of members, right? Um, Traditionally, we can sort of break it down into, okay, are you an end user of the software that this community is designed for? Or are you, we call them a partner. Think of it in, you know, in like they're the sellers, the dealers, they're the company that's selling the software to the end users and then supporting it. So you can break it down into end users, partners, and then also, of course, there's Microsoft, because Microsoft does get heavily involved with a lot of the stuff we do as well. And so, from a revenue standpoint, I typically focus all of my attention towards that partner community. These are the people that are striving to get to those end users to maybe show them their products, their services, their wares, how they can help make their lives better using the software that this whole Dynamics user group is, set up and designed around. And so basically sponsorships. Hey, would you like to sponsor a webinar? We can get your logo out there. We can get you some brand visibility, some awareness. Do you want to sponsor our big Dynamics Con conference? We're going to have close to 3,000 people in Chicago next May. And so do you want to, show your wares through an exhibit table? Or do you want to do a presentation to sort of demo or show your products? So it's really just coming up with different ideas on what that partner channel wants, right? What is it? What is your strategies? What are your goals? How do you want to represent your organization to this community? And so I sort of try to really listen to their wants and accommodate that and present different ways and opportunities for them to sponsor our community. And so they share revenue with us and we share branding opportunities with them. And hopefully it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, no doubt it would be, I would imagine. I mean, as marketers, one of the primary things that we always look for is a large grouping of our niche audience, right? Who,
For sure.
where can we find an active and engaged community of the people that we want to do business with? And when you find a community like what you've established, it's gold, because you don't have to worry about Google ads and Facebook ads and all these other things to try and, cast this broad net. Now you are very rifle targeted, in terms of who you're going after, and those dollars are well spent. So I would imagine it's somewhat of an easy sell once you're actually able to get in front of somebody that it's their target market to say, I've got 46,000 people. Is it easy, or what are the hurdles that you have to overcome?
Just like any sales role, they call it, there's some low hanging fruit, but there's still a lot of work that has to be done. They want to know more about, the bones behind your organization, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, you have 46,000 members. Great. At face value or surface value, it doesn't mean a lot, right? Yeah, you got a lot of, got a lot of potential butts to put in seats, but, what are their roles? What are their industries? What products are they interested in? Just so compiling a lot of demographic information about your members to display it to those potential sponsors so they know, hey, this is a target, right? This is the right audience for me and my product. And then all these partners out there, there's some of them are so niche that, hey, it is a good fit or it isn't a good fit.
sure.
And then, providing the benefits, right? So, hey, if I'm going to spend X amount of dollars, what am I getting for that? So in return, it's always that ROI, right? The ROI factor is, I'm going to invest so much money, I'm expecting to get this much return. And if the math doesn't add up for them, you got to sort of prove and show to them that, hey, we can sort of help you meet that ROI. So again, there's some low hanging fruit, but then there's a lot of work that has to be done to sort of convince or show them the value of participating with the community.
Yeah. Sales is always hard, no matter what. I
Yes.
love it when people say it's easy. Um, you know, it's always hard. I don't care what you're selling. But uh, let's go back to and talk a little bit more about how the community grew up and how long it's taken you guys to achieve that 46,000 number. So let's go back to, you took it over from a guy who was passionate about getting a community of peers together and talking about issues and stuff. About how many people were in the group at that time?
I don't know the exact number were in the community when it sort of switched hands. I do know the number, like in our first full year of when we had full time staff managing the group. And there was just shy of around 10,000 members in the community back in about 2020.
Okay. So in just under 4 years, you've added almost another 40,000 members,
Correct.
which is
Yeah.
extremely impressive. So, what are some of the best practices in your mind that it takes to entice people into the community beyond the have people that just run it full time? Can you walk us through, like, for anybody that's listening who wants to build a community, what are the steps that they need to go about in attracting people to get involved and to stay?
Yeah, the one of the basic rules with doing anything when you're starting, and I learned this many years ago. I never really practiced it until now, but start with the end in mind, right? People want to start at the beginning, which obviously you got to start at the beginning, but what do you want this thing to look like in the end, right? Like, what's your dream of this whole community look like at the end? Now we can build the steps on how to get there, right? So that's probably key. Number one is where's this thing going and what do we want it to look like? I think number two, for us, we have a couple of, passionate owners of our business. They're passionate about community and this whole organization and dynamic space and growing community. And so having support, right? Obviously, it takes some funds to get a community growing. You don't snap your fingers and just get going. So you got to have somebody that's, passionate and patient. These things don't grow overnight. And the other thing is finding the right people within that community to garner their support. We have an advisory committee made up of members in this community. And so there's roughly, I don't know the exact number, we'll say there's probably around 15 advisory board committee members. They've been in this industry for quite some time, and they meet periodically, if it's once a quarter, but really to sort of review where we're going, what we're doing, and what's been done. And we gather their support and say, hey, what do you guys think? Like, is this the right decision? Are we going the right direction? So getting the community to actually be a part of the decision process. And I think one of the other big key things is transparency. Um, you know, Eventually somebody's going to find out about something somehow or another, and whether it's good or bad, being transparent about everything that's good and everything that's maybe not going correctly and things that need improvement. People respect that and appreciate that.
Yeah.
And if things aren't going well, again, they will help lend support and ideas and ways to improve or fix. So yeah, I think those are just maybe a few things off the top of my head that are probably very important, I feel, to creating this a community, successful community, get it head in the right direction.
I think that what you said about bringing the community actually into the process and forming a board of advisors out of the community is brilliant. I never thought about that before, actually. In all the community stuff building that I've done in the past, it's just kind of like they're the group and we lead the group and but that seems so obvious now that I just hear you say that take now I'm assuming the people that you've selected as the board of advisors, those people are probably the ones that are there engaged almost on a daily basis or very active within the community. Is Would that be a good assumption, or would it be different?
Yeah, for sure. For the most part, I would say almost all of those board members, they do get involved in one way, shape, or form or another, whether they're presenting, sharing their knowledge, leading a meetup. Um, they have day jobs too, right? So this is a volunteer role for them as well. So they have their full-time day jobs that pay the bills, but then this is maybe a passion of theirs. And it's great to find those people with that passion because they want to see it succeed, and they feel it gives them some feeling of responsibility to say, hey, I'm part of this group to make sure it succeeds. We got to make good decisions.
Right. Now, has your community now grown into basically a business of its own that's a revenue generator? or the going out and getting the sponsorships, is that purely just to basically keep the community going, or has it exceeded that now?
Yeah, so that was one of the other things with the owners of our organization is they set out with this business entity, if you will. They're sort of entrepreneurs now. They're just some great fun guys, and they've started several businesses now. And the whole idea behind starting this entity is they said it's not a profit center for us. They said it was never designed or set up with the intention of it for them to make profit on this user group. Their whole intent was we just want you guys to continue to break even, and if you should start seeing some excess revenue, let's create more programs, let's create more learning, more opportunities for the community to digest this information or get involved or learn. And so I think maybe one thing I was remiss in saying before, starting with the end in mind, and with this community, if you're for specifically with my experiences, if you're going to put a dollar number that you need to achieve to make a profit and make money, it sort of diminishes
Yeah.
community, right? Like
Yeah.
it's hard to put the two together to make it a successful community when you're all about trying to
Make revenue.
make a profit and make
Yeah,
revenue on it.
that's right.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's not the wrong thing, but for us specifically, that's where we're finding some success. Is hey, it's not all about making money, it's more about creating that community and investing the money back in to create more programming.
Well, I think it is always a detraction from the community when a focus becomes financial, because I mean, really, all you got to do is look at social media, right? I mean, every one of these social media platforms, from Facebook to LinkedIn to TikTok, they all started out as communities. It's come get on the platform, talk to people, share your thoughts, share your videos, share all this stuff, right? It's all just community. Everybody loves it. And then they hit critical mass to where they go, okay, now we can monetize this community. And now you got advertisements every other post. You've got, um, spam on all of your messaging and everything else. And it just becomes so much more about, okay, this is now I have to pay to play type deal. And I have to be here. And that just sucks all the life out of the community. These social media channels, they're just too big to fail. But, when they do that, but I think what you said is very important. You have to be giving into the community. And I think the initial, at least, goal should be, what can I add to the community from a value standpoint for it to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, distractions, right? It's all noise out there that, yeah, I get it. You got to pay the bills, but it can be distracting from the intent.
Now, you guys found somebody who was passionate about a community, built the community, built it up to about 10,000 people, which is great. I mean, that's still
Yeah.
a big number, right? I think one of the strategies that you can use for a community is exactly what you guys did. Go find a community that's already existing and see if you can acquire it. Because a lot of times you'll find, just like what you guys found, is that the person who is passionate about it, they've kind of run their course with it. I want to be done with it. And now they'll either hand it off to you or let you buy them out. Is that a good
Exactly.
strategy?
It worked for us. Yeah, I think it goes back to do you build or buy, and you've seen over the years. Well, take for instance Dynamics. This is a division of Microsoft. Way back in the day, in 2000, I was working for this little company here in Fargo called Great Plains Software, and they just gone public a couple years before. And Microsoft had a big desire to get in the business application space, and they had that dilemma: do we build or buy? And they said, "Hell no, we're going to buy." And so they bought out Great Plains Software, and they turned it into the business apps division that it is today. So, yeah, I mean, to your point exactly. Sometimes maybe there's a community out there that's just looking for a partner, right? Hey, we need some fresh new ideas or perspective, or hey, I've run my course. I'm seeing the sunset, and I want to retire, and I want to see this community continue on. So there are options out there, I'm sure, just really depending on how passionate and how determined you are.
I think one of the big keys to that, though, is that like you can go on LinkedIn and you can search almost anything from a group, and you'll
For sure.
find groups out there with like sometimes tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of group members. Now, the difference is between that sometimes and what you guys did is you've got somebody that was passionate, that was involved in the community, that was working the community and keeping that community engaged. A lot of times on LinkedIn has completely abandoned groups. So most of the groups, I'd say 99% of the groups on LinkedIn are just dead in terms of their engagement. And you don't have a lot of, you know, interactivity and messaging back and forth and people actually coming together. There might be a string of posts there, but they're not getting any engagement, you know? So when you're out trying to find a community to either be a part of or to get, I think that engagement factor is very critical, especially when you're trying to get sponsors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying different things, right? Don't be scared to try something new. And you learn from your failure, right? But yeah, definitely, the engagement is another thing that a lot of our sponsors will look like. Well, how many followers do you have? So yeah, YouTube we got X followers. Facebook so many followers. LinkedIn, aggregately we have this many social followers. How many page views does your website get? So really, that's key to gathering these metrics in helping persuade sponsors to want to participate with you. Is you got to have some good solid facts and metrics for them to say, hey, I can hang my hat on that. I'm ready to move. Like you guys are there, right? Like you got a good following, and I can get a lot of eyeballs on me by participating and supporting you.
Well, what are some of the key metrics that sponsors are interested in?
It really just depends on what it is they're sponsoring, right? Like, right now we've got a couple of regional events that are happening this month. One's in Houston, and another's in Columbus, Ohio. For them, number one is okay. What is your projected attendance? How many you got registered now? And then what's the DNA of those registrants? What's their titles? Where what's their company? What is their product interest? So that it just really depends on what sponsorship it is you're trying to promote and sell to them, on what metrics are important to them, right? So obviously, if we're trying to do some social pushes, how many social viewers do you have? So it's really relevant to the specific topic or opportunity that you're trying to present.
It's really excellent. Really excellent. Um, okay. So what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to start their own community or who wants to enhance the community that they have?
I don't know that I got a lot of advice for starting, because I haven't really practiced through that I've helped build, but maybe for those who are maybe trying to enhance, you know, that was the one thing I really emphasize and push, is listening. And I'll use my role specifically just because that's what I'm most experienced with. But with the sales side of it, I'd pick up the phone. Nowadays most people with email and LinkedIn messaging and Zoom messaging and all these different avenues to connect, phone calls seem to be one of the last resorts, if you will. People don't answer their phones anymore, but
That's right.
I still do that. But however I can connect with them, I ask them what their thoughts are. Like, hey, what is it you want to see out of this sponsorship, right? So no different than with your community, saying, what are we missing? And we've been around for so long, X amount of years. What are we missing? What do you want to see different? No different than your community saying, hey, Monte, you're the marketer. You've been talking about marketing. Can you incorporate some sales into this marketing podcast? And
Yeah.
you listen, right? You're
Yeah.
you're trying something new. So just keeping a pulse and keeping your ear to the ground and listening to that community and what it is they want if you're providing them what they want, they're going to continue to stay engaged and stay in tune, right? Social marketing, you get your 15 seconds of fame, and the next thing you know, you're in and you're out and you're gone, and the next new big thing is there.
Yeah,
You got to try, right? Keep trying different things. Not everything you try is going to be a home run. So, don't
true.
feel like you failed if it didn't work, because hey, that idea didn't work, but hey, there's 10 more ideas here. We're going to give them a try, give them a whirl, and eventually you're going to find one or two or three that work to varying degrees. So that's probably one piece of advice. If you're not already, as we talked about, if you don't have members of your community actively part of some of the decision processes or giving you input, it just really helps a lot for you to get that pulse and get your ear to the ground and understanding where things are going. We think, because directions can change pretty quickly, especially in the technology industry. Today this is hot, and next day something else is hot. So maybe those are two key pieces of advice I can help people share about enhancing or trying to improve upon a community they currently have.
Excellent. So you mentioned that live events are beginning to be much more valued over than like webinars. So, do you guys still do webinars? And are those still attended, or are you really making a push now into mostly live events?
We're still doing webinars. Webinars are one of those things where it's an hour of your day, and so they're still pretty highly attended. When we got our start back in COVID, we did, we had Dynamics Con virtual, and we had Dynamics Con, which was our in-person event. Dynamics Con didn't come into the scene till later on, when the doors started opening for in-person events. So that virtual event it started off. We've tried varying different formats. We've done like a 3-day event. We've done 4 half-day events. We've done a 2-day event. We're doing it again here in November, and it's 1 full day of event of learning and education. The community is still demanding it because they can access it. We put the agenda out there, and they can say, okay, I want to attend during this time to this time because, hey, that's a valuable session I want to learn. Plus, from a global aspect, it's hard for people to come to North America to come to our live event. And so they can participate from anywhere from the world as long as they have an internet connection. So as long as the community is going to continue to demand that way to digest information, we'll continue to provide it. From a sponsor standpoint, sponsors aren't as in tune to virtual anymore as they probably once were when that was all that was available. But so yeah, we're going to continue to bring the education to this community in the different ways they like to consume it, as long as it's still showing some viewership and attendance.
Excellent. So, I failed to ask you, you've got 46,000 members. I shouldn't make the assumption that they're all in the US. So, you're a global community.
Yeah, I mean, predominantly U.S. and then North America predominantly, but yeah, we got a fairly good presence of members that are in Europe, and maybe smaller numbers in the other continents. But yeah, it has grown into a global type of a community where there is participation and viewership and people consuming and learning from Dynamics user group from all over the globe.
Excellent. Excellent. So, do you have people that are running the community? Do you have staff that are in different parts of the world to accommodate the different time zones, or does it all run from the US?
All of our staff currently is U.S. based at this time. I don't know what the future holds,
Sure.
but at this point, yeah, we have currently, what do we have? I'm trying to remember. I think we have 6 full-time staff right now, soon to be 7.
Fantastic. Okay. Last question. What's your projections for this next year in growing the community? What do you hope to see? What do you hope to achieve from a number standpoint?
I think the goal we had, leading up to 2025 was to get somewhere around 50,000 members. We seem to be climbing in that trajectory. So it's always nice to put stretch goals out there because it just makes you strive a little bit harder and, achieve more things. So yeah, 2025, we're looking, 50,000 plus members.
Fantastic. I lied. I have another question. So,
No problem. Keep it coming.
what's your primary source for growing that community? Is it word of mouth at this point? Or are you advertising for the community? How do you get new people?
I think a big part of it is the word of mouth. I mean, there's obviously, we're doing a number of different avenues. That's maybe one of the bigger ones. People who participate seem to enjoy it and like it. So, the old adage is you do right by somebody, they might tell one or two other people. If you
Yeah.
do wrong by them, they're going to tell the whole world
Yeah.
and exhaust themselves telling them how you wronged them. So,
Yeah.
so continuing to, do the right things and do what they want or expect, they're going to continue to give you that word of mouth. But yes, we do some marketing through social, web, email, yeah, all the standard types of usual suspects out there. We continue to do, but yes, I think probably word of mouth is probably the biggest. Just when people have a positive experience,
No doubt about it.
they want other people to have that same positive experience, and so it just exponentially starts to grow.
No doubt about it. Fascinating conversation, Bob. I learned a lot. I hope everybody else did that was listening to it. Bob, thanks for joining me today. It was awesome to have you on the show. You really brought a lot of value. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show today. This was my very first podcast. It was a very pleasant experience, and hopefully all your listeners maybe can pick up one or two nuggets from our conversation today.
Absolutely. I will have ways to contact you in the description, so look for that. If you're watching a social post, check out the comments. We'll have ways to get in touch with Bob and ask him further follow-up questions, and you can join his community. So,
absolutely. Love to have you.
Thanks again, Bob.
Thank you.